Hello, good evening, everyone. Welcome to today's session. So as usual, we'll get started. But first thing here is a quick disclaimer. Everything that I'll be covering in today's session, solely based on my personal point of view, and they do not directly translate to any sort of financial advice or trade signals. Okay. So what we'll be doing here is to jump into the markets, cover some of the outlook and opportunities available. And then from there, also talk about some of the trade setups and opportunities that you can look into for the week. Okay. So let's take a look at the overview of the calendar first for this week. Okay. So over here, if you are haven't have an account on Everything Trading, do go over to the website everythingtrading.com. You can actually register for your account and make full use of the tools available inside here, right? And one of the more powerful ones you can see that we are seeing here is the calendar. Okay, and it's not your typical calendar because on top of telling you what are some of the events, they do also share with you what is the average volatility of the particular event based on historical statistics. Okay, that's pretty important because if you're looking to trade some of this news or just wanting to be aware, if you have any particular trade going into the news, at least you are able to factor in those volatility. Okay, so of course there are other tools here available as well, but again, you feel free to explore once you have your account registered with Everything Trading. Okay, so for this week, going into tomorrow, we do have the UK unemployment rate as well as the employment change. So again, this is important. You can see the average volatility on pound dollar is about 40 pips from this particular event itself. Therefore, if you're kind of trading any related instrument with to pound, okay, just factor that in. Of course, if today you're interested in news trading, this would also open up that opportunity for you to look for that short-term movement. Okay. Then on 14th of August, which is Wednesday, we have the UK CPI data coming in. Right. Again, this is definitely important. And then in the evening, we have the US CPI data, right? So Wednesday is going to be crucial because you can see in the afternoon, we have the UK. So pound dollar average volatility is about 50 to 55 pips. And in the evening, we have the US CPI data, which, you look at euro dollar, the average volatility is about 70 pips, right? So this two news is definitely tradable. If you don't trade the news, then at least be aware there's such high impact news coming in. Of course, factor in the volatility if you're looking at euro dollar or you're looking at dollar related move, or the pound. Okay. And then going into Thursday, we have the Australia labor market data. Okay. Of course, this is not as volatile as the US or the pound CPI. But again, if you're trading the Aussie, just take note of that. Okay, and going into that on Friday, we do have a little bit of a retail sales and sort of, right? But again, those are not the key highlights. Okay, I would say this week the primary focus is definitely on Wednesday, where we have the UK CPI as well as the US CPI data. Okay, so with that, let me jump into the charts over here to kind of highlight the overview and the outlook. Okay, so first thing here, we're gonna look at the dollar index. On the 4-hour time frame, I'm actually expecting the dollar to further weaken. And of course, this also align with the fundamental perspective where there's a very high possibility um the Fed will likely cut rates, as soon as September, if not the end of this year. And of course, once they start cutting, it's not going to be a one-time off thing. It's going to start the cutting cycle. It's going to go into easing policy, and fundamentally that will weaken the dollar further, right? So going forward, if you can get a pullback towards the 103.50, 103.80, that will open up the sell side opportunity for the dollar, right? So I'm actually bearish bias, and I would say any corrective pullback would present itself as a sell trade opportunity as long as price remains below 104.8. Okay. And then of course on euro dollar, this would be more or less the inverse relationship. Okay, so euro dollar over here, we're looking at upside. The area of focus for me right now is somewhere between the 1.0860 to 1.0890. Okay, so again, if you can get a corrective pullback, okay, in ideally sets of three, that would be a pretty nice little buy trade, with a target here at 1.1050. Okay, and for me, as long as the price remains above the swing low at 1.0775, we'll be looking for upside. Okay, um, so this one here, overall structure, we're looking at this is the first wave up, a pullback, and then we're looking at internal 1, 2, 3 as well. Of course, if you break it even further, that will be an internal 1, 2, 3. Okay, so overall, that's the outlook of the euro. Okay, I'm looking at buy opportunity, but also factoring in on Wednesday we have the CPI data coming in, right? So as mentioned, this one probably need to take note of. Okay, GBP USD here, I'm short-term bullish. The market has came down quite a bit, over the weeks. Right now it seems like we have found a little bit of a bottom here, and short term we may get one more push back up as a correction, right? Or what we call a pullback. Okay. So this one, we're looking at potentially a short-term buy with a target around that 50 and 618 pullback. That will put us around 1.2850 to 1.29 even psychological number as well. Now, GBP USD over here, I'm looking at an opportunity to get involved. Okay, but of course, this one will need to readjust as the market continues to develop, because we really haven't established kind of obvious swing high yet, right? Okay, so at some point in time, if the market starts to pull back, we have an established swing high. Okay, then we have a key area that we can look for entry. So probably need to be a little bit patient. But I think the short-term direction here is definitely upside. Okay. Aussie dollar, I'm expecting some sort of pullback before we look for the buy. So I think this week probably not going to be having much of an opportunity over here. Whether we are able to look out for that short-term sell as a pullback, really depends on how price is going to develop, right? So right now, I'm essentially going to be maintaining a neutral bias. Give it some time. Again, tomorrow, we have some high impact news coming in, right? So this one here, just being a little bit patient and see how things roll. Okay. Whoops. Okay, should be the correct screen. Okay, then I'll just share the browser. Okay, yeah, so I think just now didn't see the correct screen. Yeah, so Aussie dollar over here, we're looking at a pullback as I mentioned. So we're looking at waiting for price to actually pull back before kind of commit, right? And just like I mentioned that if we can get some sort of a short-term sell opportunity, really depends on how price develop. Right now we don't have any sort of a confirmation. Would love to see some sort of a lower time frame sign of a rejection to the downside, right? That kind of potentially kickstart the retracement. So one of the potential sign here is to look out for short term. If you can get a break of this swing low, okay, so perhaps a little bit of a double top-ish structure. If you can get a break of the swing low here, that may start the pullback, right? It will give us some sign of a confirmation that, all right, price has established a swing high. We're likely looking for the pullback. Then, any sort of a correction here will give us a short-term sell, right? So Aussie dollar, that's the take. I think pretty much quite similar to the pound dollar over here as well. Okay, pound dollar, we're waiting for the pullback in the short term. Okay, dollar Canadian, we are looking at short-term bullish. The expectation on this is that price has actually made a move down, broke this. Okay, but it starts to show lack of kind of momentum, lack of momentum. So we are expecting some sort of a pullback eventually. So this one here, I'm looking at opportunities to get involved in the buy. Okay, on the lower time frame, ideally what we want to see is the market to start give us some sort of a confirmation, right? Whether is it taking out that high, or if the market just continue to do a crawl, right? So corrective move to the downside will give a crawl, and then we have the swing high here. If the market can take it out, does a pullback, that would be a buy opportunity as well. Okay, so we have a couple of things here that is building up, but we definitely also want to factor in the Wednesday US CPI, right? Because that data itself is gonna really give the market an expectation in terms of will the Fed cut rates in September. If inflation data actually comes down on CPI on Wednesday, then we can really see the dollar weaken quite a bit. Okay, really because traders will start to really price in the fact that September will likely have a cut. Okay. Now the opposite can be true as well because people are right now expecting, in terms of September, the Fed may cut. If CPI comes in very hot, which means very good data, then that would also remove, the possibility in a way where we get a September cut and the dollar can actually strengthen quite a bit. Okay, so I would say a lot of things would hinge on what is the actual data on Wednesday. Okay, so I would say most of the dollar pairs probably not going to move much going into that. So just be aware of it, right? Sometimes you just need to be patient building into a high impact news. Okay, dollar yen here, I'm expecting a deeper pullback. Okay, I think dollar yen is in a pretty interesting focus for this year going into next year. If you've been following the fundamental and the macro development on the Bank of Japan, okay, so you know that the Bank of Japan has started its tightening cycle. Okay, and that means that fundamentally the yen will continue to strengthen. Okay, in fact, it has strengthened quite a bit. If you can measure for dollar yen, from the peak to where the bottom is, that's a 12% drop. Okay, it's actually very significant. Now, is there more downside for the yen? I mean, the yen pairs, right? Is there still room where the yen can strengthen? I personally feel that that is because the Bank of Japan again just started its tightening cycle. Okay, most of the time when central banks pivot, they don't do it one or two times, right? They do it a couple of times and it stretches across a certain period of time. So, if you take a look like the yen versus all other currencies, we are having a fundamental divergence in the policy, right? Where the Bank of Japan is actually tightening, and then most of the other central banks, they were looking at easing policies. So we have like one strengthening and then one weakening, and then on a trend perspective, that can actually be very, very clear cut. Okay. So yeah, I would say short term, we may continue to see a little bit of pullback here, but if you're looking at the longer term perspective, we have a lot of downside room that the dollar yen can really, move lower, right? So if you go to the daily time frame, you can see where we are right now and how much room it can travel to the downside. Okay, so this of course applies to some other yen pairs, right? Like euro yen, pound yen, odd yen. Overall, the fundamentals on the yen side is pretty clear. Okay. Then we have gold. Gold seems to be strengthening quite a bit as we're speaking. But overall, right now we're looking at still expecting a little bit more downside, right? Of course, we need to see how price is gonna be developing today, as well as going into tomorrow. Okay. So we would love to see at least some sort of a rejection for our bearish bias to maintain high probability. But the validity of that is that as long as price is below the swing high, we are technically still in a expectation of a 1, 2, 3. Okay. So price can travel still a little bit to the upside, but as long as it doesn't break through this high, we're technically still able to forecast and say, okay, there's a probability this can still come down, right? So the invalidation is here. around 2480. I would say it's not really looking the best kind of setup to sell. But the probability and the odds are still there. Okay. Now, for me personally, I do have this running trade over here. Okay, not looking fantastic, obviously. But if it hits my stop, so be it. That's part of it. But if this starts to come down, right, then that will be pretty ideal. Okay. So if this doesn't really play out as we are expecting, the overall structure that I'm gonna next look at is gonna be likely some sort of a triangle. Okay. Where we have this as a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then from there, perhaps more upside. Okay, so we'll see. Okay, so this one here right now, I'm still bearish, but really depending on how price is gonna react and develop for the end of today, going into tomorrow, things might actually need to get updated a little bit. Okay. Crude oil here, we are looking at bearish bars here as well. Okay, but of course, ideal reaction would be around that 618. Price actually shoot out a little bit, quite similar to gold. But of course, crude oil here, I'm prepared to really pivot into potential bullish bars, depending on how price is gonna react off here. Okay, so if crude oil here is gonna come down correctively, okay, then I would be starting to look out for the possibility where this can be a double bottom. Right? And we get our first mini push up, a correction here, and then we start to look for upside. Okay. However, if price starts to react and comes down pretty impulsive, then we are having that opportunity to see if price can actually retest the bottom of the channel before the push up. Okay. So really depends on moving forward how price is gonna be developing from here, right? If price takes out the swing high, then obviously we're not looking at bearish bias anymore, because then that is a clear break of structure. We'll be looking at this forming a double bottom. Okay, so that's the take on crude oil. Now S&P 500, pretty neutral right now. We had a pretty solid recovery after that massive drop. But overall, I'm still not looking at the buy yet, right? Or at least being aggressive, because this pullback doesn't really look impulsive as compared to this drop. So there's this possibility where price can actually just come out a little bit, recover towards this area, and maybe make another move down, forming a little bit of a double bottom before the pushback up. Okay. So S&P, Nasdaq, Dow Jones, generally in the US market, I'm gonna be a little bit cautious. Right. So that's the take on that. GBP USD, GBP JPY, AUD JPY. I kind of talk about the yen just now already. So I think overall yen pairs we're looking at downside, but if you're looking at the short-term play as a pullback, the dollar yen may present a better one. Okay. Pound odd, I'm looking at the short-term buy opportunity, very similar to the dollar CAD. Okay, but if you ask me mid-term after that pullback, where are we likely looking at downside? Okay, because we're looking at this as a triple top kind of structure. Price broke this neckline. We are expecting the pullback, but eventually we are expecting one more drop, right? 1, 2, 3. Okay, so short term we can look for the buy, but eventually we'll be focusing more on the sell side of things. Okay, so this one here in dollar CAD is essentially quite similar. Euro Canadian, bearish bias. We did get a strong push to the upside, but the market rejected with equal momentum. So that forms a V rejection. If we can get a correction here, we'll be looking at the sell. Okay, I'm not too keen in buying this up in the short run, right? Because I think if you're looking at counter trend short-term buy, I will personally focus more on dollar CAD or even the pound odd. Okay, Euro CAD here, I think we're just interested, going to be looking at the sell side if you can get a correction. So that's on Euro Canadian. Okay, and lastly here we have Bitcoin. So BTC had a massive drop. If you can't recall, it happened over the weekend on Sunday going into Monday. We have a massive drop. Price actually rebounded almost, I would say, with equal momentum. So we are bullish bias, right? I would say that this can be a fake out. And if the price does give us a corrective development over here, maybe coming back towards the area at 56,200, 54,600, we may look at it as a buy opportunity. Okay. BTC for me, I do have a setup here I'm looking to get involved in. If the price can pull back a little bit towards 56,900 area, I'll be interested in the buy because we did get a break of structure here. Okay, we have a demand on the block, okay, that causes this break of structure with momentum. So if the market can continue to pull back a little bit towards the zone, that would be a buy opportunity for me. Okay, kind of a pending buy, right? So the invalidation of this particular trade idea will be at this swing low, because if the market takes out that swing low, then we're no longer in a bullish market structure. Okay, so that's on the Bitcoin side. GBP, as I mentioned just now. Yeah, can't mention that crude oil I'm also in, right? This two trade between gold and crude oil, very, very similar. Okay, it's not looking like the most ideal right now, especially on gold, right? Getting closer to our stop. We'll see how it goes. If this gets stopped out, so be it. As I mentioned, right, that's why we have our stop. That's why we have our invalidation level. Crude oil here, looking still okay. Anyway, we have our stop there, so let's see how it goes. Okay. So for me, currently running trades are this two. The ones that I'm potentially keeping close watch is GBP USD plus Bitcoin. Dollar Canadian and the pound odd may have something build up. But also I'm factoring in we have the UK CPI as well as the dollar CPI coming in. Potentially, I would love to see how price would develop out of that event, right? So kind of post-event, if you can get a confirmation from those events from price action perspective, then that would be better, right? So that will build up a much higher probability setup for us. Right? Yeah, so that's basically from me for the week. So that's the outlook that I have right now. Hopefully that gives you guys some idea and perspective into the market. Right? Yeah, so that's all for me. All the best, and I'll see you guys in the next session. Yeah. Okay. So bye bye.